Well, good day to you and welcome back. Well, typewriters are clearly intended to be used for writing, writer being in the name of the device. But writing is work. A lot of times it can be if you are intentional about it or serious about it. But you can also have fun with your typewriter, and I'm speaking about typographical fun. This is an Olivetti Studio 44. And I like these machines because they have half character spacing and half line spacing, which gives them a lot of typographical variety and capability for having fun typographically. So I'd like to explore a little bit today about typographic fun with your typewriter. This is like typewriter playing. Stay tuned. Okay, well, let's throw some paper into the Underwood Olivetti Studio 44. Okay, so this is a half line machine. Take this off. And a half space machine. So what do we mean by half line machine? Well, let's say we want to do E equals MC, and we go up a half line, and we can do 2. So that we have E equals MC squared. So we're able to move vertically in half line increments, which is really nice. But it's also a half space machine. And these machines that are half space, how they work is when you press, let me go back to this equation. When you press the space bar, it goes half at character space and distance, and you release it, it goes the other half. Like that. So if you look at the manual for typewriters like these Olivettis, they'll tell you that one of the useful reasons for having half character space machine is so you can insert a missing character in a sentence that's already been printed. So let's just say, for instance, we have test, and we're going to go test, but we skipped a letter and then test. Okay, so we have test, TST, and test. So what they would have you do is erase that 3-letter middle word. For our purposes, we're going to pretend like we erased it. So we're just going to retype it just for the sake of illustration. So there is my line. I've erased the errant letters. So now I'm going to start at the last letter of the previous word, test, and then I'm going to press the spacebar, release it, and then press and hold it. Type the T, release the spacebar, press and hold it, E, release the spacebar, press and hold it, S, release the spacebar, press and hold it, T. And what we've done is I have essentially borrowed a half a space from the full spaces on either side of the middle word. And by borrowing a half character space from either side, it gives us room to type the extra letter. So now we do have still spaces between the words. They're just not as big. So that's just one example of why half space machines are handy from a regular writing point of view. But we're interested today in creative purposes, having fun typographically. Well, here's one of my favorite typographical tricks, and that is typing titles. And I often like to make the titles so that the letters are more widely spaced than normal. And one of the tricks you can do with this is also type it in all lowercase. We're going to do a really silly title. This is the title. We're going to put a space between each letter and 3 spaces between each word. So this, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is the title. It has a nice typographical appearance to it, nicely spread out. But then another thing you can do is to underline it, underscore it in red. So we typed it in black, we're going to underscore it in red. And one thing you can do here is to underscore only in the spaces between the characters. like that. It's kind of an interesting little typographical effect that gives your titles a very different and unique look to it. And so there's different ways of doing this. You could, of course, underscore just the words and not the space between them. You could type the title in red and underscore it in black, however you want to do it. But there's a lot of variation here, a lot of fun you can have with titles. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to center the title on the paper. So I have the left edge of the paper at 0 and the right edge of the paper is around 83. The midway point of the paper is half of 83, which is like 42, let's call it, which is right about there. You backspace once for every 2 characters, and we count spaces as a character. So we're going to do the same. This is the title. So THIS space I, S space, TH, E space, TI, TL, and then the E. Now, I'm going to be typing this title not spread out as I did the other one, but just normal spacing. This is the title, and it is centered on the page. Now, if you wanted to do it the same way, but have the letters spread out, we'll start at the midpoint, which is 42. And this time we're going to count the spaces. Remember, 1 between each letter, 3 between the words. T space, H space, I space, S space, space space, I space, S space, space space, T space, H space, E space, space space, T, I, T, L, E. And there is the title. This is the title spread out nicely. And of course, if we wanted to, we could do a little typographical variation. This time, let's do the red underlining only on the words. There we go. That's a nice looking title, huh? I think all of these work pretty well. Each one is different. Of course, I'm using lowercase, and that's just a typographical choice. It kind of looks a little modernist, but you can, of course, use all caps. You can capitalize just the first letter of each word. It's totally your choice because you're the one playing with the typewriter. So the next thing I like to do is I love playing with spacing of characters. So we're going to type a sentence here, "Honey, I've shrunk the kids." And I want to start with widely spacing most of the sentence. So we're going to have 1 space between each letter and 3 spaces between the words. And then when we get to the word shrunk, we're going to do something special. So here we go. Okay, now shrunk. So we're going to type the S, we're going to backspace, and then hold down the space bar and type the H. Then we're going to type the R, and then we're going to backspace and hold down the space bar, type the U, release it, type the N, and then backspace, press the space bar, type the K, and then the kids. So, honey, I've shrunk the kids, and shrunk, the letters are all half space apart. So they're kind of jammed together, but it's an interesting effect you can play with. And sometimes it works better with red ink. Other times it works better with black ink. Let's try it on black. So S, we backspace, and then we press the space bar to move a half a space forward. There's H, and then we release the space bar and type the R, and then we backspace again, press the space bar, hold it and type the U, release it, type the N, and then backspace, hold the space bar for the K. So it depends on the particular typeface of your typewriter, and also whether it's like 10 or 12 characters per inch, the size of the typeface or the spacing. It actually works a little bit better with smaller typeface machines, but that's one thing you can play around with. Okay, so another typographical effect that I like doing is with titles. With some machines, they're not half-space machines, but they do a slight spacing effect when you press down the space bar. This is a Hermes 3000, and if you press down the space bar, it moves very slightly, and then when you release it, it moves the majority of the rest of the character space, like 1/4, 3/4. So what I like to do here is let's try this whole "this is the title" again, and we're going to do the space between each character and 3 spaces between the words. So okay, now I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to set it to red, and I'm going to press down the space bar and retype each character. So that it is slightly offset. That is a really cool effect. Another typewriter of mine that'll do this is the Royal Mercury. It has a similar kind of 1/4, 3/4 spacing between pressing the spacebar and releasing it. So you get this kind of ghost effect or shadow effect, and if you use the bichrome for it, you can make this two-tone lettering that's really pretty cool for titles. So another thing you can play around with is on a machine like these Olivetti's that are both half line and half character space, you can kind of make this erratic style lettering. So let's say I'm feeling. So feeling is spread out, and then E is above the line. I'm going to come back down. I'm going to backspace. I'm going to go R. And then half line below, back to the line, and then backspace and the A. There's the T, backspace, space, and down. So I'm feeling erratic today. So the word erratic is half character spaced, but it goes above and below the line, kind of a zigzag fashion. It actually works better half spacing the characters this way than keeping them on the same line, because they don't overlap as much. And it really does look like it's erratic. You're feeling erratic. Now, the other thing you can do is we can go ahead and do that same zigzag effect above and below, but we can space the word normally. So we go E, R, R, A, T, I, C, A, L, L, Y. Erratically. So this is an interesting effect because you can kind of use these effects if you're writing poetry, and you can kind of elicit a kind of feeling. I'm feeling, stretching out the word gives it a different sense of feeling, and having the letters crunched together but kind of zigzagging above and below the line or this way, it gives you a way to express emotions in the typography of the typewriter that you normally wouldn't be able to do. Now, the interesting thing about using the half line spacing effect here is that it looks quite variable, but it's very consistently variable. You're moving it a precisely half line vertically every time. But you can also use your disconnect here, your line spacing variable, set this lever back to 0, and that gives you the other capability of doing some really cool stuff. We'll set it back to 0, and now, let's see. So So here we go. I'm feeling swimmingly good all day, and this is like a sine wave. You can just do the effect as you feel like doing it. It's infinitely variable. It gives a really good effect to the letters, and if you're writing poetry or something, or just you want to express yourself in words, but in typography of the words, this is a great way to do it. And then because you're using the temporary line, space, and disconnect, you can set it back to your regular ratcheted position and continue on with the next line if you wish. But now I have to go back to work, very rigid and not swimmingly good as the previous line. So a lot of different typographic effects you can do, and the typewriter gives you that ability if you have half line and half character spacing effect, along with your variable also. Very fun. So this effect here, where we did the erratically up and down every half character space and every half line. I'm going to play around with that. I'm going to set it to red, and it was the word erratically. Now I'm going to type emotionally, and I'm going to start it half a line below the other one. So let's see. So in black it says erratically, and in red it says emotionally. And the two are like these sine waves that are staggered by half a line's height, and they alternate in colors so you can kind of read them separately. I think that's a really interesting effect. So there's a way to type the date on a letter that I've seen on some of the letters I've received, and I really like the way it looks. You can do it either on black or red, and typically I do it in the upper right corner maybe. So you need to type 7 characters on each line, and so you typically will do 4 letters representing the month, and then a space, and then 2 digits representing the day of the month. So here we're going to do it in caps. So SEPT space, and today is the 20th, and then we will full space, and then we'll do 2 space 0 space 2 space 4, 2024. And it really leaves a nice little effect here. September 20th, 2024, a nice little kind of a rectangular box that puts the date very neatly in one little corner of your page. I like that typographical effect. So another way that you can do this date thing is, instead of fitting it in 2 lines, we can do it in 3 lines. And again, we're going to make it a total of 7 character spaces wide. So we're going to start with our month, and you could choose to do this uppercase or lowercase. I'm going to try it lowercase instead. So S-E-P-T. So that's the month, and then now we have to figure out how to do the day of the month, and it's the 20th. So I'm going to do probably in black, and I'm going to do it in the middle, 2 space 0, and then we will go 2024. So there is another way of doing your little date field in the corner of your letter. I think that's very interesting looking, and of course you can play around with it. The middle line where you have the day of the month, you could probably move it out, maybe do between the S and the E and between the P and the T, a little bit wider apart you could do. So I think it's a very interesting effect. The nice thing about it, of course, is it's your choosing. It's your creative choice as to how you want to do it. And these are just merely suggestions, so there's an infinite variety of ways you can do this on your own. So another way you can do titles, this is kind of fun to do, is I'm going to do a centered title, and it'll just be this is the title. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to underscore it in red. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to write what typewriter I used. So studio space 44. So there it is. I have the title, a red line, and which typewriter I was using. That's kind of a fun way to do titles because you can fit the name of the typewriter in and people know which one you used. Well, of course, I've just scratched the surface of what's possible creatively with some of these ideas. These are just suggestions, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with a lot more ideas on how to creatively use the typographic potential of the typewriter to uniquely express yourself. I hope you do so. I hope you have a lot of fun with this, and let me know down below in the comments what you come up with. But as always, stay creative and have yourselves a great day, and bye-bye for now.